Hello, this is Brian Rowe with Mythic MTG Tech, doing number 213 here. I'm going to go in depth on miscut cards versus off-centered cards, and I'm going to talk about something almost nobody talks about, which is the value of these cards. I recently traded for this Brainstorm and put the image up on Instagram. This is what I would call a classic off-centered card. It is off-center enough that it does have some additional value. Anything that's just a little bit off-centered, like 60% on one side and 40% on the other, where you can clearly tell that it's off-center, probably is actually worth less than a well-centered card. Centering is one of the 4 factors in advanced grading, and that usually devalues the card. Once you get to the point, though, where you're over about 90% of the border on one side and 10% or less on the other, then your misprint and oddity collectors start to get interested in these cards. And this one is starting to get into that category. You're probably at that 10, maybe 5% of the black down there at the bottom and most of it there at the top. The reason that I like these off-centered cards is because they're clearly tournament playable. 99% of judges are completely fine with something like this. Once you get to be able to see a second card, which is really the definition of miscut, when you either start to see the edge of the printing sheet or another card above, below, left, or right, then you're into what I would call miscut. So you've got off-center, which is anywhere up until you see another card or the edge of the printing sheet, or where you can't see part of this card. And then you have miscut, which has another card or the edge of the printing sheet or something else on it. There are a significant number of judges that will not let you play cards if they are in any way confusing as to what card they are. So if you've got the title for a different card, if this was shifted up, and then you had another card's title on the bottom, a lot of judges won't let you play that. It may have a very high value, but it's only playable in casual situations. Let's move on and look at a few others here. The value on this one, I gave about 20 in trade and mid-20s, and I wouldn't get rid of it for less than probably 40 or 50. Anywhere in that mid-zone, I would rather just keep it in my binder and have it as a cool oddity. You can find miscut and off-centered cards a lot on eBay. That's one of the only places to look for prices. Buy it now prices are almost never accurate. Do not trust those. Completed auctions are a little bit better, but so few of these actually sell that you don't have a decent sample size to know what the true value is. The true value is whatever somebody is willing to offer on it, or if you offer something to someone and they turn you down, it's clearly worth more than that rejected offer. And I would reject an offer at under $30 on this easily. I probably would reject one until I got to about 50 or so. The step here is another classic off-centered card. It's more to the left there. Slightly playable card. It's definitely sees a little bit of play in EDH and occasionally in Legacy Maverick as a fun little trick with Knights of the Reliquary. The more playable a card is, the more valuable a card is. I gave about $2 for this card. I probably wouldn't give it up for less than 5 or so. Happy to keep it in my collection, though, as a card to throw into EDH decks anytime. I've toyed with the idea of doing a Misprint Oddities EDH deck. Definitely would make that deck. Next one we're looking at here is Dawn of the Dusk. Now, this is an edge case because people will disagree over whether this is miscut or off-centered. There is an area there at the upper left where it looks like some of the white is missing. The angle that it's at, I would clearly call that miscut. The thing is, you don't have there at the bottom the classic additional card showing through, which is your sign of a miscut. And we'll get to some miscuts as we get through this stack. Some people would not refer to this as a miscut because you don't see a second card there. I think that they're wrong, but there's an argument either side. This could be at the bottom of the print sheet. We'll get to some cards like that also here in a minute. This Pygmy Hippo is one of the most off-centered cards that I've got. You're looking at really like a 1% versus 98% there. The side-to-side off-centering is more rare. It does not add additional value. Oh, just for a second. On the Dusk Till Dawn, virtually unplayable card. I think I gave $1 on this. If somebody was to offer a few dollars in trade, especially if it was for another miscut card, I would definitely do that. The more playable a card is, the more valuable it is, as with all Magic cards. The Pygmy Hippo here, another one that I gave a few dollars on, doesn't have much value at all. It's just a fun one to have in your collection. The vertical versus horizontal miscuts, those that are miscut left to right are definitely the rarer. Most cards that I see are miscut top to bottom, not left to right. The recall here is an interesting one, another one that I would put in the severely off-centered. Doesn't have much value. It is a rare, but it's not a very good rare. Doesn't even see much play in EDH. A few dollars on it would be reasonable. Orcish Veteran, same thing here. Fallen Empires in particular has one of the highest amounts of miscut and off-centered cards. I've seen people with huge portions of sheets that they have reconstructed of these. That's not my cup of tea. Very impressive. A few dollars here. It's nice that it is Quentin Hoover artwork also. Very iconic artist. It'd be better if it was playable. Foils are definitely tougher to find in the off-cut and miscut area just because the print run is so much smaller on them. This one is still off-center. It'd be so much better if I could see a second card on it. It's really off-center. Very happy to have this. As a foil land here, I gave about 10 in trade for it, and I probably wouldn't get rid of it for anything less than 20, 25. Just very, very pretty card overall. Lands are playable in any deck, and if I actually want to do a EDH deck that is all miscuts, I would need a lot more lands. This is a really weird one in the way that is miscut or off-centered. So you're missing a little bit of the gold here, but you don't see any other card. And depending on how you look at it, this might just be really off-centered. It is shifted the way that it is, and the corners are cut kind of weird. I will do another video on square cut corners, but this is falling into that category. Almost square cut corners. Now we're into what I would consider, or what anybody in the industry would consider, miscut. You have clearly a second card, a little older card here in Samite Keeler. This is the type of thing that I would give somewhere in the $3 to $5 trade range and be happy to hold on to it for anything less than 10. Now the next three here are very interesting. So what you've got going on here, and hopefully we can see them, is connectors. These are miscut cards where they are connecting. They're all from the same sheet, from the same deck. I believe these were in a dual deck or an event deck, and the whole event deck had some things off. A friend found these and knew that I collected oddities and gave them to me. I would probably hold on to these for anything less than 20. One of the cards is playable here in the Fireball, and if you could ideally end up with both of them in the same EDH deck, that would just be very, very cool. So connectors is another term to know, and it's when you've got miscut cards where you see each other's cards on them and you can line them all up. The next one we've got here is from Fallen Empires. It's a Mind Stab Throw. There's a green card showing above it. I don't know what card it is. I would really need access to an uncut sheet, or at least a picture of a Fallen Empires common uncut sheet to figure out what is above it. Value on this, I believe that I gave $1 to a card shop for it. It's in that typical very low value because it's unplayable. Now we're back to off-centered here for a second, but this is an extremely playable card. It's a legacy playable card. Price of Progress is wonderful. This card at the time was worth $5 normally, and I gave $10 in trade on it. I probably would not get rid of it for less than $30 or $40. Just very, very cool legacy card that you could play in a tournament. People would notice. Very happy with it. We've got an island here that is severely miscut, and we've got another card, a land below it. I'm not sure what land it is in this case. If you had the connecting land, there would be a much higher value to it. I would put this at about $3 to $5, that range. Hymn to Turok, we've got an off-centered Hymn to Turok here. This is the most playable card from Fallen Empires. If there is one thing to collect in miscuts and off-centered, it's definitely a sheet or a group of Fallen Empires Hymn to Turoks with the same artwork where they're all miscut or off-centered. At this point, I have two of them with different artwork. One that is off-centered and one that is miscut. Very, very nice group. I would like to get two more so that I can play a full set in Pox at some point. Neither of these happen to be my favorite artwork, but I like the artwork on all of the Hymn to Turoks overall. Got one more thing to share with you. So this is one of the Ninja decks. I've got 2 pages of it here. The whole deck is connectors, starting with some off-centered, off-cut, starting with some off-centered and miscut, and going until we have completely miscut and connectors. I traded for about 3 times the retail value of these. I probably wouldn't let it go for less than 200 or so. Unfortunately, not all of the cards were off-centered or miscut. The Ninja that was in here, one of the new ones, one of them was not. Shakashima Student, and I believe Baleful Strix was not, if I'm remembering correctly. This is really the starting point to do like a blue-black EDH deck. You have so many lands in here, and you've got a few playable EDH cards. Ink Eyes was miscut. Very, very nice overall. And on the bottom ones here, you start to see some really cool stuff with the bottom of the print sheet. So there's not for resale posted on them at the bottom. You've got the printing lines there. Very nice overall. These are things that you don't see very often at all. Thank you. This has been Brian Rowe with Mythic MTG Tech, talking about the difference between miscut and off-centered cards. If you could take a second and ninjutsu your way into being a subscriber of the channel, I would greatly appreciate that. Thank you to everybody who's over there on Patreon supporting the channel. I'm trying to make it to the $350 goal to start doing weekly Magic Finance videos. I've got an EDH video coming out later this week, and I've got a partnership coming up to announce next week. I'm going to be doing some really cool videos once a month, working with a new website.